Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? If the answer is yes, then you're ready.
Men who want biological kids are starting to discuss me.
When men say they want kids, I push. Why? First response I get is usually they want to be a father. Makes sense, but you can be a father to kids that are not biologically related to you. Ask why it's important for their kids to be biological. So many say legacy. This isn't Game of Thrones.
In recent gaming news, proving why the gaming industry is still the absolute worst, Yoshi P, which many of you might know as the person who saved Final Fantasy XIV and is now in charge of Final Fantasy XVI, I did an interview with IGN and he was asked a question about the lack of diversity in the game. In this interview, IGN asked, in regards to diversity in the game, can we expect to see black characters in Final Fantasy XVI or people of color of non-white characters in general? And Yoshi P responded at first saying, this is a difficult question. It's not. It's really not a difficult question at all. And then goes into this very long, like 5,000 word explanation as to why there just won't be any black people in the game, saying that they were based in the game more in medieval Europe. And the thing is, if you did just a little Google search, you would know that black people existed in medieval Europe. Black people didn't just pop up in the 1980s. Okay? And it is incredible to see how gamers are going into not only infantilize Yoshi P, who is 49 years old, who makes games with a global audience, like Square Enix has a global audience, PlayStation has a global audience, saying the same old excuse like, oh, well, people in Japan just don't know about black people. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. What do you call the caricature that Barrett is in Final Fantasy VII? It's like any ethnicity, like people in Japan and East Asians, they come in all shades. So why is it only the people who are pale get representation in? Just goes to show that anti-blackness and colorism is a global language and just how insidious white supremacy is on a global scale. And just as gamers do, white gamers do show up right on time to gaslight people of color, especially black people, about their feelings about wanting to see more representation in Final Fantasy. The word fantasy is in the title. It's fantasy. You are building the world of magic and elves and Viera and stuff like that. You have a choice. That is a choice to leave out people of darker shades in your games. And even on like a bigger scale, like not even talking about Final Fantasy, like somebody tried to engage with me, like intellectually dishonestly engage with me and saying like, well, have you not heard of Forspoken? Like, why don't you just play that? You mean Forspoken? The thing with the all white writers room that's about a black woman with all white writers? That Forspoken? This is what I need from gaming developers. Just say you don't want black people in your game. Just say that. Stop taking the scenic route to arrive to the answer. Just say you don't like black people and you don't want us in your game. Gave us a 1,000 word essay just to say, nah, I don't like y'all like that.
Yo, everyone. It is the eve of Christmas Eve. Woo! Looking at you, Sharon. Even though you're probably not on TikTok. But anyway, this week's been a little bit fucked. I've been sick. I've had to have a COVID test to make sure that I didn't have COVID because I had a lot of the symptoms. I forgot to take my meds on the day that I went and got tested because I had left the house early so that I wasn't sitting in my car for 600 hours. I had a client mansplain and get angry at me because I didn't ring him because I was sick. And then I was a dickhead and had to go in another person in my office over something that was really quite trivial because I'm looking after her work while she's on leave for the next few days. And it's like, what the fuck? Can we just I just want 2021 done. It can be done. I'm not having my parents over on Christmas Day now in case I still have this crazy virus that I had the last week because it is not a good time. And if COVID is worse than that as a vaccinated person, fuck me. That was disgusting. Red hot pokers in the head, exhausted, tired, achy. It was, yeah. I haven't wrapped any presents. And at the moment, it's going to be Blake and I, my 13-year-old, on Christmas Day. So maybe I'll do a video on Christmas Day as well. just to say, you know, Merry Christmas, season's greetings. Maybe I'll do the 12 days of Christmas. 25th of December all the way through to 6th of January. Got enough gin for that. It'll be freaking awesome. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope that whatever's happening in your world is tolerable. It's really hard at this time of year, and I'm not going to lie, my mental health's been shitty too. But the end is nigh for 2021. I'm not saying 2022 is going to be better, but 2021 is nearly out the door.
Hi, so thank you so much for this question, and thank you for trusting me with the answer. So I'm going to speak to my own experience and some barriers that I have faced in my classroom and how I overcame them. So we're talking about like specifically inside the classroom, not necessarily outside pressures like outside prejudice, politics, things like that. If you'd love to talk about that, I am more than willing to, but I'm going to keep it in the classroom for now. And the first barrier that I've kind of run up against when creating an inclusive classroom or striving towards an inclusive classroom is probably the better idea, is the idea of student comfort. So being comfortable, the students to identify how they'd like to identify, to use their pronouns that they like to use the name that they'd like to use, and to be able to change that identity if they feel like they need to do that. So one of the first things I do, and I mentioned this in an earlier video, is including pronouns in an icebreaker activity. So to make sure that you are asking for those pronouns and for that preferred name. I don't always say preferred name, it's really just their name. But so that way that a student doesn't have to fight against what's on the attendance or what's in your brain when you look at them for the first time and the impression that you get. The kid can just tell you right off the bat, this is who I am, this is how I identify, and this is my name. So that way you can take that information and apply it for the rest of the year. Unless, of course, it changes, but doing that right off the bat tells a child that this is a safe space and this teacher actually cares about who I am and not just the information that they were given or the information that society presents when I walk through the door. And I think that's really important to start off on day one icebreaker activity with allowing students to identify however they would like to identify. So the other side of that is remaining consistent in that, because I have felt that like sometimes teachers can be super inclusive on day one, and then it kind of like breaks down as the year goes on. And maintaining that consistency and allowing students to feel safe in however they identify. And so that includes allowing them to change what pronouns and names they're using. You know, these are kids we're dealing with. So things change. It's a time in your life where you're trying to figure yourself out. So if a kid's going by one name at the beginning of the year and a different name by the end of the year, that is absolutely fine. And you have to remain consistent and flexible and say that whoever you are in my classroom is, it can be ever changing, and that is absolutely fine. And I think the other side of that too is sharing with your students, about your own identity. So making sure you share your pronouns, whether you're cis or trans or, however you identify. It's important to share your pronouns and kind of normalize that behavior so that trans students don't feel, or queer students don't feel othered or excluded or different. So those are some of the barriers I've run into. I would love to hear any other advice or any other ideas. So feel free to comment. Thank you so much for this question. Have a wonderful day, beautiful humans.
Oh my god, have you seen this? This black woman says that she doesn't need white allies, that she doesn't like white women in general, that she doesn't need our help. Okay? Wait, aren't you upset about this? She says she doesn't like people like you. I heard you. She says she doesn't need your help. She doesn't. I'm just here for support, and if she needs that help and wants that help, I'm right here. She said she didn't like white people. I'm sorry, is there a point to this? I told her that if she was going to act that way, then I wasn't going to help her. So let me get this straight. Your allyship is contingent upon black people liking you? No, she was being mean. By setting a boundary which you continue to violate, they need us. No, they don't. Especially if your allyship is contingent upon having your feelings catered to when they're literally in a life or death situation. Wait, see?
Hello, beautiful humans, and happy Pride Month. June 1st also holds the significance for me because it is the wedding anniversary for me and my now ex-husband. So between those two things, I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately, And so I want to take this month to just celebrate the journey of coming into my queerness and share with you all some of the wonderful things that have happened since I began this journey, and to give some shout outs to people and different things that have really helped me. But before I can do that, I have a message that I want to share. This was a message shared by a lot of content creators last year, and it meant so much to me when I was still very much in the closet. And that message is this: no matter where you're at in your journey, but especially if you are still just getting started, you are valid and you are welcome here in this community.